Hi, it's me, Mr. R, and today we're going to work on a reading strategy, summarizing by thinking about the main idea. And before you start thinking, Mr. I have no idea what you're talking about, don't worry. I'm going to explain it. That's the whole point of this video. Why? Why are we practicing this? Well, the point of reading is to understand what we read. Why? If we understand what we read, we can use that information for ourselves or share it with others. If I read one person's book, then I have their ideas. If I read another person's book, then I have their ideas. And if I read another person's book, then I have those person's ideas inside my head too. This is really great because then it's not just my ideas. If I never read these books, I would just have to use my own ideas, and I don't always have the best ideas. But if I take all of these people's ideas, I can connect them together in different ways and make all new ideas, all new thoughts. And that's really great. That's very helpful. And if somebody asks me for help, I can say, well, I read this, this, and this, and I can help them too. So reading is really great because we get all this information that we can use for ourselves, and we can use it to help other people. We can only do this though if we understand what we read. How can we make sure we understand what we read? Well, that's where summarizing comes in. If you can summarize, that means you understand what you've read. What is summarizing? Well, summarizing is not about memorizing what you read. It's about making sense of it. Summarizing means that you can, in your own words, tell what the most important ideas are. We're going to make sure we can summarize by using boxes and bullets, basically. If I know the details, I can connect them together to figure out what the main idea is. And if I know the main idea, I can summarize. So let me show you what we're going to do. We're going to practice summarizing by using boxes and bullets to find the important details and connect those important details together to figure out what the main idea is, the overall idea. How do the details connect to make this main idea? If I know that main idea, well, then I can summarize. And it means I understand it. Let's try. Here's what we're going to read about. And before you say, Mr. I don't want to read about that, that's too bad. We're going to learn about Taylor Swift. And we're going to do it together. All right, let's get started. I'm going to make some notes at the bottom. I'm going to try and find the main idea, because if I know the main idea, I understood what I read, and I can summarize. How am I going to figure out what the main idea is? Well, I'm going to read in chunks. I'm basically going to do boxes and bullets. So I'm going to read in chunks and then pay attention to the details inside each of those chunks. And then I'm going to see how they connect to make one big idea. So this would be a box, but we don't know the main idea yet. And we're going to make boxes and bullets for all the little chunks. So details for paragraph, and this is the symbol for paragraph. It's like a backwards P. Paragraph 1. I'm going to try and figure out what paragraph 1 is about, and I do that by finding the important details that are mentioned. Okay. In 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic stopped most live performances, so Swift spent the summer at home with Alwyn, her boyfriend at the time, writing and recording music. On July 24th, Swift released a surprise album, Folklore. So I'm going to stop and think. My brain's kind of full. Stop and think, okay, what did I just read about? What were the important details for this little chunk? COVID-19 happened, so she couldn't perform. She spent the time at home writing music, and she released a new album, a surprise album. Okay, I can do that. COVID happened. When you take notes, they don't have to be complete sentences. They can if you want it to be. COVID happened, so she stayed home, wrote music, and surprise album. Okay, that is the first chunk. all these things go together. I think what this first part is talking about is a surprise album. That's mostly what they're talking about. COVID happened. That caused her to stay home and write music, and because of it, she had a surprise album. All these things work together to talk about how she made a surprise album. I'm going to do the next paragraph. Do I know what the main idea is? Not yet. I can't make a summary. I haven't read enough. I don't really know what the whole thing is about. I know what one chunk is about, but not the whole thing yet. Paragraph 2. Oops, that is a very small box. This next chunk. Again, I'm going to read this chunk. I'm going to find the important details. I'm going to see how they can connect so I know what this one is talking about, what this chunk is talking about. Folklore was completely different from Swift's past albums. She worked remotely with well-known folk and indie rock musicians. This gave the album a mellow, dreamy tone. Swift surprised the world again when she released another album. I'm going to stop for a second because that was a lot. My brain's already full. So I'm going to go down here. I'm going to stop and think, okay, what did it start by talking about? Oh, she had a new style. The new album was a new style. Okay. Let me see if that's what those details were about. Oopsie, sorry. Folklore was completely different from Swift's past albums. She worked remotely with well-known folk and indie musicians. This gave the album a mellow and dreamy. All of these sentences are about how it was a different style. And then this sentence talks about how she surprised everybody again when she released another album on December 11th. Swift described Evermore as a sister album to Folklore. Okay. So, new style. Another new album, which was also a surprise. Any other important details? Well, she worked with other artists. Worked with others. But most of this, I feel like, is talking about a surprise too. She did a new style, which was a surprise. It wasn't like something she did before. She worked with others, and she wrote a new album, even after this other one. So I feel like all this is also about surprise style. Oops. And surprise album. I'm already kind of noticing something. I don't know what the main idea is, but all the chunks have details that focus on surprises. In the first chunk, it talked about COVID and staying home, and so she could write a surprise album. That's what the first chunk was about. The second chunk was about her new style, which was kind of a surprise. She worked with other people, and she made another new album. All these things work together again to talk about a surprise style and a surprise album. So I'm seeing that both of these chunks, there's stuff that connects between them. If I added all this up right now, I'd say the main idea is about how Taylor Swift likes to surprise people with her music. Let's see if the rest of that, let's see if that's true. I'm actually going to write that right now. The main idea is Taylor Swift likes to surprise people with her music. I think that's what the main idea is about. I feel like I'm ready to summarize, but I haven't finished, so I can't really summarize yet. Let's see what else. Details from the next chunk. So that's going to be paragraph 3. Let's see what that one's about. Next paragraph. In February, In February 2021, Swift announced she had finished re-recording her 2008 album, Fearless. So in 2021, she re-recorded an old album. So another recording. She released the first single, Love Story, Taylor's version, on February 12th. The full album was released in April. The new Fearless included 6 new songs that had been cut from the original album. So I'm going to stop and think about what I just read. Let's see. Re-recorded album. So she re-recorded an old album and made it new. And it had 6 new songs on it, which were a surprise because no one had ever heard them before. So that also feels like a surprise. 6 new surprise songs. In February, she announced she finished re-recording. She released the first single, Love Story, on February. Yeah, all this is about how she released another album and again surprised people by having new songs. New music. Surprise. For all of these chunks that we read this chunk, the details in it, all added up to be about surprise. We read this chunk, all the details added up to have one idea, surprise. These details, same thing. All of these paragraphs so far, all the details in each of them added up to talk about how she surprises people. Let's read the last paragraph just to make sure, and then we can make sure we know what that main idea is so we can summarize. Last paragraph. Let's see. Through all the ups and downs in her career, Swift never wavered in her devotion to her music or her fans. She once said, "People haven't always been there for me, but music always has." This paragraph is a little bit different. Through all the ups and downs in her career, Swift never wavered in her devotion. It's talking about how she is devoted or works very hard to make music. That's a little bit different. Works hard, devoted. Okay, so this one is about working hard for music. I guess that connects because she has to work hard to make new music. I mean, she wrote a bunch of new songs and stuff, so I think that does connect pretty well. Let me show you what we did. We wanted to be able to summarize what we read to show that we really understand it. We can only do that if we know the main idea, what it's all about. Well, in order to figure out the main idea, we pay attention to all the details and see how they connect together to make one big idea. Okay? So we read the first chunk, we paid attention to the details and said, you know what? These details from this chunk have to do with a surprise album. We read the next chunk and paid attention to the details and saw how that chunk also, all those details connected to also talk about surprise style and the surprise album. And then we read the next chunk, paid attention to the details and what that chunk was about, new music, and it was a surprise. And then we read the last paragraph and paid attention to the details. This one talked about how she works hard and she's devoted to her music. And that makes sense. She's making a bunch of surprise music. Now that I know all this, I can put all that together. What is all of it mostly talking about? All the details connect together to make one big idea. Taylor Swift likes to surprise people with her music. If I said it was about, the main idea was how she wrote music during COVID, no, it's not all about that. It mentions that once. If I said it was about how she released 6 new songs, it did mention that, but that was only mentioned once. It wasn't about all, like, the whole thing wasn't about how she wrote those 6 songs. And if I said the main idea was about how she worked hard, a little bit, but it wasn't all about that. The main idea, all these details connect together to make one big main idea, which is that Taylor Swift likes to surprise people. Now that I know that, I can summarize. If you ask me, what was this about? Oh, I can tell you in my own words. This chapter, chapter 9, is about how Taylor likes to surprise people with her music. She did it when she stayed home and wrote a whole new album during COVID. She did it when she released a whole new album later that year with a new style. And she did it when she re-recorded a new album with 6 new songs. And she works hard to do all of this. So what we did was we summarized. How did we summarize? We read in chunks, found the details that we thought were important, and then paid attention how it all connected to make one big idea. You're going to try now. I know that's the hard part, but you can always rewatch this to help you practice it, okay? Good luck. I know that was a lot, but I think you can do it. If you need help, let me know.